So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second session of talks conducted as a part of Bazinga by IEEE student chapter of Rajgiri School of Engineering and Technology and Government Engineering College, Thrissur. The flagship comprises of 14 events and bridges technical and non-technical events with a tinge of creativity and fun. So let me now take this opportunity to introduce our esteemed speaker of the day, Vineeta Hariharan ma'am, a renowned public policy maker and expert. She's also a public speaker and a lady with immense knowledge in public sphere, which includes thought leadership and policy formation. And indeed, it's a moment of pride for us, as she's also an alumni of GEC Thrissur Civil Engineering Batch of 1995. She's also an alumni of the School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi. Vineeta ma'am has been with bilateral and multilateral institutions such as DFID and World Bank, strategic committees of the Government of India, and she has been engaging with the senior most bureaucracy and political leadership in policy formulation and has led the implementation of several flagship programs. She believes in effective change and transformation, and we are honored to have such an eminent personality address us today. I would like to welcome you once again, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So first of all, how are you?
Yeah, I'm very well. Yeah, thank you. I hope all of you are doing well in Thrissur.
Yeah, hoping everybody, even in the audience, is feeling good today. And so, how has been a typical life? Like, how's a typical day in lockdown life for you?
Oh, lockdown life, yeah, it's been an extremely, it's a huge culture shock for somebody like me, and I think most of us, who've been having a very busy life, and so it took me some time to get used to this new life. But then I made best use of this time, and went on a journey inwards mostly, and a lot of introspection. Found new strengths within, and I think I'm going to be emerging as a different person after this lockdown.
Thank you. So, like before we go into the career-oriented questions, there's this one thing I'm pretty sure all of us would like to ask. So, how was it life like a GECN?
GECN. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I love talking about this aspect of being a GECN. So that was the campus actually that gave me the first introduction to myself, so to speak. That's where I recognized all the talents that I have, and whatever I have is what the seeds were actually sown in the campus of GEC. So at that point of time, I don't know now if it is still is, but it was a wild, free, and absolutely, wonderful campus that gave me so many opportunities to discover myself. So it was not so much of academic focus then, but it was more of understanding various dimensions of your personality, from writing to debates to acting to whatever you name it, all the extracurricular activities except sports I experimented in Thrissur. And afterwards, when you get serious in your career, and then your masters, you get very rigorous in your academics, then you kind of bury that aspect. But after a point of time in life, that again resurfaces. And so that makes you what you are. And I think what I am today, I owe it all to GEC, the campus in GEC. Yeah.
And I would also like to tell the viewers that we are open to queries. So, if you have any questions, you can write it down in the chat box. So, diving to the career-oriented question. So, how has the journey from being an engineer graduate in Thrissur to a public policy maker been like? You have explored so many diverse career opportunities. So, what was the driving factor or motivation that made you make these choices in life?
Yeah, so basically, it has always been, I've followed my heart, so it has been my instinct that's been so strong in guiding me throughout my career. At every stage of my career, right from college of engineering, the choice of discipline of civil engineering was a very conscious choice, although that point of time I had got into a computer science and architecture and so on and so forth. But I thought civil engineering had that human element to it. And that's when I chose consciously to do civil engineering, and which I don't regret at all, although I never practiced civil engineering at all. But that was the only subject I thought in engineering which had some life in it. And so I chose that. So at every stage, right from the choice of discipline in engineering to my master's, Masters, again, it was about all my peers were either doing an MBA, or most of them were into MBA at that time. So I said, no, I want to be different. I don't want to follow the herd. And so then I followed my instinct in my heart. And then I discovered this program in School of Planning and Architecture, which was in urban planning and policy, which was I thought it had a very wide canvas. So at every stage, I wanted to go one step higher from what I am already doing. I didn't want to be spending the rest of my life designing buildings and bridges, which, I mean, it's a very skillful field, but that is not where my heart belonged. And so then I chose this course in urban planning and policy, which gave me a huge canvas and exposure to how policies and urban planning, city planning is done across the world, and especially in India. So that was the second choice that I made. And then after that, every career choice, every job that I did, I always followed my heart and my instinct, actually. And also with this desire to actually go from micro to macro at every stage, So the second, after a decade in the Housing and Urban Development Corporation, where I led a lot of programs, public projects, appraisal, implementation, going to the ground and traveling across the country in villages and cities, and implementing various public projects. Then after a decade, I thought, okay, it's enough. Now I want to go beyond this, and I want to know how things are done as a decision maker itself, not as an implementer, but as a decision maker. So that's when I did another course in public administration and policy from the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy in Singapore, where I got a scholarship from the government, and I pursued a mid-career program. So that was, again, a huge game changer, just like the School of Planning, which gave me rigor in academics. The second course was more about global exposure to various case studies. That at that point of time, what was troubling me was why is our country grappling with so many infrastructure issues, so many developmental problems? Why is our country the way it is at that time, 2010? And so this course was a huge, it gave me a perspective on how Asian countries, especially Southeast Asian countries, how they tackled their issues of the various developmental challenges. And so it was a cohort of around 80 different policymakers, administrators, bureaucrats from different countries, 80 countries of the world. And so we through a case study approach, it was mostly a case study approach, and where we understood how various developmental challenges are resolved across the world. So the learning I got was like, my country is not so different from the rest of the countries, So I came back feeling, consoled that every other country is facing a lot of issues, and they resolve it in their own way. And they find their own methods of addressing various challenges of developmental, and country issues. So armed with all that, I came back, and then luckily I got opportunities with various ministries and bilateral institutions, which enabled me to utilize all the knowledge that I gained from my various, academic pursuits, from engineering to public administration, policy, planning. So the first one was with the Ministry of Housing, where we planned for making India slum-free. So we made a policy for making cities slum-free. Then we implemented that in 50 cities across the country. The second one was in rural development, where we planned for clusters of growth in rural areas, which was about providing urban amenities in rural areas, as to how to make rural as good as urban. So that was formation of 300 urban clusters, so to speak, across the country. And after which, with various other ministries, helping them frame policies, and then eventually these policies then become national flagship programs. So, and now, of course, off late, there has also been a realm of me, which is the Thrissur Engineering College itself, which is coming out in terms of getting out into the public sphere and speaking, and coming out of the pure play career, orientation, to being more wider, personality, and addressing the public at large because it's time now, since I've gathered so much of knowledge and experience. I think it's time to share it with the world and with the new generation. So that's how my journey has been. So I think all along it's been my heart that's guided me, and my instinct. Without being very reckless about my choices, I've tried to follow the route which actually gives me happiness. Actually, at the end of the day, it's what gives you happiness that is most important. Because without being happy in what you do and without being passionate, you can't really deliver well. So, yeah.
Sounds like a very fascinating journey, but we know that in the past there have been a lot of instances where women have been denied opportunities. So, how has been your experience with this harsh reality, and how do you manage to overcome these challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I don't know, all along, I've never felt different being a woman. So we have a family of, I have another elder sister, and both of us have been brought up, I wouldn't say like men, but just like any other person. So a woman or a man, it was never a thing conscious division in my mind right from my childhood. Thanks to my parents who brought me up in such a liberated way. And I also, but because then you realize afterwards, because the kind of the choice of career that I did was in developmental, issues and in the development world. So then I got an exposure into as to how deprived and how backward women can be across the country. And so that's when I actually realized that what a privileged upbringing I've had. And so talking about challenges, luckily, I don't know, in the public sphere in India, there is a lot of room for women to work and excel. And especially in the government of India, you have so many women leaders. We've all had a woman prime minister itself, which is so rare in the globe. So I think that way, Indian women are given a lot of opportunities in the public realm, so to speak. So I've never felt intimidated or challenged as a woman per se.
Is there any piece of advice that you would like to give the women aspirants, or some opportunities that they may not be aware of?
As a woman, particularly, I think, but the developmental world is a very good world for the women, for the woman, because I think we all are blessed with this emotional intelligence, which we have, I think, which is more than men. Sorry for all the men folks out here, but there is an element of, there is this personality which women have, a lot of compassion and a lot of empathy and kindness. So I think that works well in this public sphere, be it the Indian Administrative Services or in a public policy field or in a a developmental world. I think women can excel very well in this field.
So I think a few of us may not be aware about what public policy is and what are the careers associated with it. So can you please give us a small description and enrich us about the national program and how they are funded?
Yeah, sure. So a public policy is a course, it's a master's that course that is now being offered by most of the leading institutions like TISS and IRMA,
Mm.
and all of these I think are offering public policy today. So it's a course that you do after your graduation. So after BTech, somebody can easily do a master's in public policy, and it's a program or a field which is in demand these days, and especially at the national level and even at the state government level, there's a requirement for a lot of young professionals who have this exposure to policy planning. So in an MBA, what you learn is about how do you manage a company, whereas in a master's in public policy or public administration, you learn how to manage a government, be it the state government or the national government, and how do you how do you make a strategy for a developmental challenge, like, for example, poverty alleviation. So, how do you make a strategy for that? So, you start with a problem statement, you understand what are the root causes of that problem, then you devise a strategy that helps you intervene at various levels and address all the challenge areas that are there. So, that is what a public policy is about. And typically, once a national policy is formed, it then becomes a program. So the distinction between a policy and a program is that program is when it gets into the implementation stage. There's a budget that comes in from the government of India. And that budget then is then routed for various intervention areas that are designed in the policy. So that's how a program is developed. And the program typically spans over 5 years. So wherein you have to cover the entire country mostly. Most of the flagship programs cover the entire country. That is 29 states and 7 union territories. So you have to actually implement that program in all the states and union territories. For example, if I take the National Rural Mission, which I had an opportunity to formulate and implement, it's about formation of rural urban clusters. So we had to actually form these clusters in all the states and union territories. So depending on the population of each state or the requirement in each state, the number of clusters that are allocated are different in each state. So based on that, then we have to see that all these clusters are given the necessary subsidies and the amenities that come out with, through those subsidies, like basic social, civic, economic amenities, etc. So that's what's typically a policy and a program.
It's something that none of us like really ponder that much into, and there's so many steps to it. So if you had to fashion one, so what would be your dream public policy, and how would you plan to implement it?
I don't know. I've been lucky enough to implement two of my dream projects, so to speak. One is the slum-free city planning, which is something so close to my heart about making India slum-free. So I had an opportunity to at least go at least a bit small distance in that in making a guideline for making India slum-free, a step-by-step process of slum-free cities. So that's one thing that I could do. And the second was, of course, urban clusters, which is about providing urban amenities in rural areas. Both of these have been dream projects. But I would look forward to working also in the agricultural and in the farmers arena now, because that's something that I haven't really got into.
So, like now coming to this pandemic that has left the entire world stunned by its drastic effects on mankind and the economy. So, what are the public policy lessons that we can learn from the pandemic?
Yes, absolutely. So this pandemic has actually taken the whole globe by complete shock, actually. So as per, there was a recent survey of, there was a health survey in which countries like Netherlands, US, and UK were to were one of the top performers in health systems, but even those countries have failed in tackling this pandemic. So I think most of the countries in the world were not equipped to face such a huge epidemic, biological epidemic. So I think the lessons that we learn is there are different types of measures that you can take for a pandemic. One is the short term, which is reactive, which is what we all have done now. Different countries have announced various packages for helping the small businesses, for helping the farmers, and those are the liquidity measures, that immediate response measures that one takes when that's called reactive policy planning. The other one is the proactive, which is in the medium and the long term. Like for example, the Kerala model has been appreciated widely across the world. In terms of, so it all came from the medium and long term planning that we did long back. In various governments, successive governments, right from the 60s, have been planning on very robust healthcare systems in Kerala. So that actually came in handy when we have such a huge pandemic outburst. So I think that's something that the whole country needs to work on. Different states need to really equip their primary and secondary healthcare, tertiary healthcare facilities, especially states like Bihar, and all of them are really, really suffering in this pandemic. So it's all because of the lack of health infrastructure. So something at the medium and long term we need to really work on in all rural areas. And besides that, various other policies of adaptive policies, like for example, social distancing is something that we were not familiar with. But because of social distancing, the kind of jobs that one does during this pandemic also differs. So we need to have flexibility in the way we function. We need to build in these social distancing aspects in various chains of the economy, like in supply chain or various other aspects. So that's something that we need to take care of. Besides that, the government really needs to work on earmarking budgets for pandemics. So I've even written in a recent article that maybe we could consider having a ministry for pandemics itself, where we have an allocated budget and we spend towards improving our preventive and curative measures for pandemics.
So, like post-pandemic, hopefully that the new normal doesn't stay. So, what are the career opportunities that can be, that will have more reach after this situation, or that people can aspire for?
Right. Yeah, I think this pandemic, like never before, we've come to use digital interfaces, so much, which we've never done before. So So I think this digital world has become a huge leveler, so to speak, across various sectors, sections of society. We're able to cut across and communicate. So I think communication would be a big, career field that will open up after this through the digital means, of course. And
Mm.
of course, digital communication, digital marketing, social media. I think these are some things which are very predictable kind of career choices that will emerge. But the brick and mortar will also come back. It's not that this is going to stay. Like you said, the new normal will not go on forever. So we cannot do with manufacturing is what I've always maintained. Service sector alone cannot run the economy of any country. So we need to get back to brick and mortar, and we will get back there soon as the vaccine is out and as soon as we're all equipped, the brick and mortar will have its run again. So yeah, but there will be a lot more emphasis on digital communication, I think.
And like I would like to remind our viewers, if they have any questions, they can just put them down in the comment in the chat box. And ma'am, you've had a lot of experiences. You've interacted with so many diverse cultures. So, is there any experience that you'd like to share with us, or any particular maybe experience that you've had, or something that really gave you a good insight about how life is while working with World Bank, or something that you're not actually witnessed before?
Sure. Yeah. So maybe my education in Singapore for a year. I think that, and also the interaction with different professionals across the world. So what I've learned, which is different from India, is I think the international students or the international professionals, they're very true to themselves,
Mm.
and they don't actually want to cover up things, and like Indians have this very famous way of saying yes and no at the same time, so which is not acceptable in the global world. So you need to be really, and I think that's something that I really appreciate, because the value for truth is very high in the international world, in the global world. So what you are is what you are, and what you say is you mean what you say. So that is something that I think I feel which is very different from the Indian way of working and talking and communicating. And also, I think what the how the way they communicate, the way they articulate, is very. It's extremely factual, and it is very well structured. Whereas India, I think our education system, we need to lay a lot of emphasis on how to articulate better, I think. So, although we
Yeah.
call ourselves the argumentative Indians, so that can also become quite, irritant when you go into a global world. They don't really appreciate this kind of talking and, incessant talking without any clear articulation. I think that's something to be very critical about India versus the international world. But of course, we have our strengths, because we are a democracy. So we've grown up in a democratic world, so which gives us this ability to think laterally, and so that's something that we have an edge over the be it the American or be it the Singaporean or Southeast Asian. We have that edge. We are well-rounded personalities. And of course, I think however modern we are steeped in our cultures as well. So I think that gives us the root, that gives us a lot of strength to combat any kind of challenge across the globe. So I think the rootedness of Indians is very, very, it's very strong, and it takes us through all challenges of life.
I think we have a question here. So, Vishnu asks, so how do you think one can balance the informal and formal aspects of life while working with a very open sphere like public policy?
Right. Yeah, that's a good question, Vishnu. Actually, public policy and public sphere is something that gives you an opportunity to blend all aspects of your personality. So you may really not want to have another hobby, actually, because it's so self-consuming. It's so all-consuming. Sorry. So it gives you an opportunity to speak. It gives you an opportunity to interact with people, and a lot of things you can build into a public program. You can even have cultural shows in a public program. The way you communicate about an issue, it's through probably street theater or some dramas at the grassroots level. So I think it's a field which gives you an opportunity. If you're a multifaceted personality, it's a very good field to be in.
So Like, what would be your last words of motivations for the younger generation for their career in life?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, as I said, follow your heart at every stage and not to be reckless, but in your decisions, allow your mind to guide through your heart, and your instinct will always, give you the right answer. I feel because you've all studied enough, and you've almost going to complete engineering, or you've completed
Mhm.
engineering, so which is quite a good basic education that you've had. So you can trust your mind to guide your instincts, but never go against your instinct, and don't go by peer pressure. That's a mistake that many children do. And then at a later age, at 40, in their 40, they realize, no, actually I wanted to make films, so let me start making films, which is also not bad because you make enough money by the time then you can do your own productions and all. But by the time, a lot of your creativity would have also got a little eroded or shaped in different ways. So it's good to realize yourself at a very early age, I think. But much of your younger generation is already following your instinct and heart, I feel. So it's you're going in a good way, I think. So just that perhaps, this digital overload has, I don't know, maybe it has made you all very focused on the social media and, those kind of communications more than the real world communication. So maybe you'll also have to go out in the open world and do real time interactions as well.
I think this pandemic has provided everybody that required break to think about what they really want in life. And all these interactive sessions are, letting us know about a lot about the career opportunities that we didn't know existed,
Right.
and maybe work over our interests. There's one more question, like, who is your role model? Who do you seek inspiration from?
Uh, well, actually, I'm not really one role model, so I don't really. I mean, but then I always follow, inspirations. I always try to derive inspirations from success stories. So, a lot of women that I follow, of course, starting with, it may sound cliched, but Indira Gandhi has been quite a big inspiration when I was a child. But later on, you realize the flaws and the autocratic aspects is something that you don't want to really imbibe, but she was a true inspiration at one point of time. Then going from there, various other people, even Michelle Obama is a great influence on the way she works and the way she delivers, and Oprah Winfrey is somebody whom
Mhm.
I really follow a lot. So and then of course many women leaders, I try to follow and see what are the success stories and how did they overcome challenges, because it's really not easy to be successful in this world. So today I'm speaking to you, but there are so many hundreds and hundreds of internal challenges that you have to overcome at every stage in order to become successful and to actually come out to this form in which you can represent to the world. But internally there are a lot of struggles, especially, like I said, of course, women and men, they're not much of difference, but women also have a lot of internal struggles, which you need to overcome, and such and imbibing success stories from various other role models help you in going along.
As you mentioned about like the how students are and how we need to rethink about our choices and take a career mold a career accordingly. So, do you think like the current education system should be revamped, and how it should be revamped?
Yeah, I would not want to quote the new education policy. I really haven't studied that in depth. But my own views are that, yes, we need to really go away from the system of rote learning, which is very much
Hmm.
prevalent in our schools, and especially with the CBSE syllabuses which schools follow. It's a lot of emphasis on memory and by heart, and learning things by heart and without any application of the mind. I think that's something that we really need to change the method of schooling, and looking at more of application oriented modules, and also looking at coming out with open book exams. I think it's a very good concept of having open book exams. At least in the 10th and the 12th, you should go for case study methods of education and applications, and also the exercises that you do, the answers. I mean, the kind of exams that we have should be based on natural thinking and application of theories rather than just rote learning. That's something that's very important. And also, I think there should be a lot of emphasis in vocational training also, job-oriented kind of skills which students should have at a very young age, not just theoretical knowledge. I think we need to be equipped with real-time applications as well. So those are aspects I think which we need to work on in the education system.
So we have a question here, is like Augusto asks, how do you approach in solving major and multiple challenges at the same time?
How do I do?
Yeah, how do you approach in solving major and multiple challenges at the same time?
Right. So yeah, when you have multiple challenges, one tends to get bogged down for sure. But I think the way of dealing with it is to prioritize and prioritize your tasks and prioritize your challenges as well. And because you can't really address all of them at the same time. And I think if you talk in the context of the public challenge or a developmental challenge, it's a lot of stakeholder consultations that help you. So even in your, if it's a personal question, even in your personal life, there's no harm in consulting. You can consult as many people, friends, elders, juniors. The more you consult, the better you equipped you are to deal with your challenge that is posed in front of you. You need not really follow everybody's advice, but you can pick and choose certain good elements of
Yeah.
all of them and apply your own mind ultimately.
So I want to ask you, like, you have traveled abroad a lot, right? So what is that one favorite place of yours?
I love Europe actually. So Europe is some. I think everybody loves Europe. So Netherlands. I mean, Rotterdam was a very very cities. It was really enchanted me and charmed me. But I also liked Singapore a lot because Singapore, it was a city state which really impressed me by of course the scale is very very small and maybe as big as Kerala, the state of Kerala only, and but the way they go about life, the discipline which can be it can be a bit too much also at times, but it also helps them to live their life in peace and and also bring out other elements of their personality because they're not bogged down by everyday challenges because the discipline that they've had in implementation of various aspects of their growth. So people on an everyday level, they have a very peaceful life, So I think that's something that enchanted me about Singapore.
So thank you, ma'am. Let's see. I think we're pretty much done with the questions. Is there anything that anybody else would like to ask? Okay, so what is the biggest change management challenge you've faced and how did you handle it?
Yeah, change management. I would say that working with the government of India, it's not easy. So you have to actually interface with a lot of rigid bureaucracies. So bureaucracy in India it's evolving, it's changing, it's becoming more modern, and it's becoming more flexible. But at the same time, there's a whole lot of second tier and third tier officials whom you have to deal with. So that is something which actually challenged me in my public policy life, at least since 2010, since I finished my master's in public administration. So that is something which was a dampener, so to speak, in my otherwise very exciting public policy career. So that the initial phase, I was bogged down, and I was almost going to give up this because of the challenge of dealing with street bureaucrats and lower level bureaucracy. But slowly, with a lot of insights from various other motivational lectures, even from Sadhguru and all, is what I learned is to accept the reality and try to move around the reality, and not try to change them so much because it's very difficult to change people. So you come out with a method in which you can, it's a win-win, it's a win-win situation for all.
Mm.
So that is the way that you can bring about change. And I think, of course, when you talk of in another context, when I had to disseminate the National Rural-Urban Mission, that is something again transformation at the grassroots level. So how we did that was through constant communication, constant dissemination of knowledge, constant interaction You just have to be passionate about the cause and just go and deliver, go out there and keep on, believing in yourself and doing it. So
As you mentioned, you worked in the National Rural and Urban Mission. So, do you think Indian rural issues can be solved in the near future? And the gap between the rural and urban development, can they be bridged?
yeah, actually, today we are seeing a different world emerging because rural
Mm,
India, I think, is much stronger than urban India today, and in terms of even infrastructure, the so called infrastructure of cities is something that is breaking down, and it is just not, they're not able to grapple with this teeming millions that are coming into rural areas. But like the current pandemic, we've seen migrants going out into rural areas. So I think more and more there will be an emphasis on strengthening our rural areas, and a lot of work is actually being done by successive governments in rural areas. In terms of actually the self-help group, there are a lot of women self-help groups that are being groomed in rural areas to make them economically self-sufficient. So the economy of rural areas is also something not like a typical MNC kind of economy. It is tailor-made to the requirements of the rural areas. So I think our rural India is emerging very strong, and we will emerge as a strong rural base going from here. And even today, in the time of the pandemic, it's the agriculture sector, it's the food processing sector that's actually sunrise today, when
mm, yeah.
most of the other industries have failed. So there's a lot of strength in rural areas, which we need to tap and support so that they grow. Because 60% of India is still rural, more than 60% is still rural.
So, coming to a GEC question again. So, you're also the college magazine editor, and you were also part of Graffiti and the member of the theater group. There's an endless list. I remember talking to one of our seniors, and you were also there at that moment. So, are you still keeping in touch with the side, with that side of yours, the literature oriented, the theater part? So how important is it according to you to have a creative side?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is something that is extremely important, and it's something that you should never lose touch with. And if you're a truly creative person, I think it'll never leave you. So it'll never leave you to sit in peace with yourself if you don't really, allow yourself to explore that dimension of yours. Never bury that dimension. So all along my career, even if I've had a very hectic life, I would try to take time out for my hobbies, to paint and to sketch, to sing, to dance, and to even act and play sometimes. I've tried to take time out and do theater as well. So even now I'm trying to edit, to be, to bring out a magazine of the alumni also. So we are at it, and with the GEC alumni. So we're working along with Professor Krishna Kumar. We are trying to bring
Mm.
out an alumni magazine. So I keep doing these things, experimentative things on the side, and so that doesn't help me to. I mean, so I'm always restless in that on that front. So if you're a creative person, you should never let your creativity. You should never bury your creativity. You should always find time to be able to exploit that side of yours.
So now that you're at home, so you're painting, and how are you like typically spending your day these days?
Yeah, so I try not to sit alone or sit idle anytime. So of course, the online courses are the things that keep you busy in your pastime, and trying to get back to my sketching. And also, I'm going to be launching a foundation soon called Sankasa Foundation, where I'm planning to hold these kind of talks and through this medium, and come out with developmental solutions actually through the medium of talk shows and things like that. So it's still work in progress, but that's something that came out of this lockdown phase. And apart from that, yeah, I'm also dabbling with various other hobbies, and yeah, writing is something that I keep doing, because that is something that is easy to do, because even if you're very busy, pre-lockdown also, I would just jot down things in my mobile wherever I was traveling. If I found something interesting, I would just write a sentence or two. And my first book that I published, called Son the Sea Child, was a collection of poems, which was actually done through various mobile jotting downs and various travel, things that I did. So I think that will never leave you, your creative side.
There's a lot of things that we came to know that we didn't know about you actually before. So we're looking forward to the magazine that you just talked about. We have
Right.
one more question. So, with respect to India's population, the number of modern cities which were planned from the level up are really low. So, how do we upgrade the infrastructure of our current cities to accommodate the influx from rural areas? This is by Shahrad.
Right. Yeah. So that's like it's an eternal issue actually. This urban rural rural urban migration. That's why we came out with the National Rural Urban Mission, which is not just a rural development policy. It's also helps the urban areas, because you're helping rural areas to become stronger. So not just by it's only that much that you can do in a city. You can't really equip a city so much to deal with the teeming millions that come in. So you make your rural areas as good as your urban, so that the need for distress migration is not there so much. So that's something that we need to really work on. The cause of that, the root cause of cities becoming overburdened, is because of lack of opportunities in rural areas. So we need to find opportunities for people to stay back in their hometowns. For example, me, I've left Kerala and I've come to Delhi. So I mean, why not? Why shouldn't I get a job opportunity as good in Kerala itself, or in my village? Or so that's how India will become strong, I think. But cities per se, yes, there's a lot that needs to be done, because our cities were never planned. Now, most of our cities were not planned, except few like Chandigarh, which was politically cobbled a long back, and it's come out very well, and they've still maintained those planning standards. Very rare in India. Bhubaneswar is another example of a planned city. But the very few planned cities, most of our cities have come up organically. Even in Kerala, if you see, it's one big Reuben stretch where a city, kind of blends into a village blends into a town. So it's very organic. So it's very difficult. It's to actually tackle issues of cities in India. It's very complex. The only thing we can do is upgrade wherever, whatever is there, we in situ upgradation, go a multi-layered, even if it's bridges, or I'll take the example of Tokyo, multi-layered bridges, and to save on land. But if it is land, intense, then you can, of course, look at forming satellite cities. So that's another way of tackling the problems of cities which are overburdened. Like Pune was a very good satellite city to Mumbai. And then Pune is also emerging as a huge a metropolitan city today.
Being someone who understands the importance of current affairs and to be aware of what's happening around, do you think the current generation is growing wary of current affairs and general awareness?
Current generation is wary of current affairs.
Yeah, like feel very detached.
Is it? I'm not sure, because they're not interacting so much with the younger generation. But I think, yeah, they are a bit focused a lot on certain pursuits that they have, and not very sensitive to issues around them. Perhaps that's something that needs to be worked on. And consciously, we need to actually, maybe our education system should also be able to give you the exposure to various other issues of the country and your neighborhood or your community. There needs to be, even in engineering college, I think we need to have these kind of small summer, during the summer holidays, you should be able to go to a village and serve, and do some community work, do some social work. I think that really opens up your mental horizons.
A lot of practical aspects of learning are indeed missing. So he's
Right.
hoping that the new policy will actually help us
Right.
learn. Viewers have any doubts, you can please write it down. Are there any new courses or some opportunities that the youth may not be aware of that you feel that it's necessary for us to know and that would help us choose better options?
Yeah, I mean, public policy is something that you could look at. Apart from that, I would also encourage all of you to also write the civil services. It's not, something that we didn't think of in our times, because that time the emphasis was so much on being technical and going into an MBA degree. But I think civil services is something that you can really look at as a career, although you need to spend 1 or 2 years studying for that. But I think it's worth it. If you really crack it, then you have a good career in the developmental world, with a lot of authority to do things that you want to do. Other than that, you can look at public policy, which is something which I think may not be so, you may not be exposed to it so much, but I think that's something that you can look at, a very interesting field. And I think these are some things that you all can think of doing. Even IRMA has very good courses in rural management. I think that those are also very interesting. That's a very interesting career to pursue, rural management, which is going to be the future for India now, I think. So, because most of the multinationals and all of them would be looking at rural India as their market. So even if you look at it in a commercial way, that's going to really pay off. So I think those are some of the things that you all should look at, not just the traditional, engineering and doing it. And unless you want to teach engineering, then MTech is probably the way to go.
Can you tell us something about your alma mater, apart from GAC, like how life was at the School of Planning and Architecture, and the degree? I read somewhere that you also have a degree in economics, executive MBA from IIM Kolkata.
Those are some of the things that I keep doing. No, but yeah, School of Planning was an entirely different world from Thrissur Engineering College. And Engineering College was all about, as I said, discovering myself and less of studies and more of, discovering other aspects of your personality.
Feel like that.
So School of Planning was like a big, you land with a thud to the real world. And suddenly I came to Delhi and I was exposed to the harsh world of Delhi and all the Delhiites and aggressive students around me. And it was so tough to cope up. The first 6 months, it took me 6 months to actually cope up. But then I had this inner determination and willpower to prove them all that no, I have to excel. I have to, overcome this. And so huge rigor in that school. So huge rigor, a lot of emphasis on practical applications of what you learn. It's not just about, just learning. It was about applications, case studies, going to the field, understanding, applying that, coming back, coming out with strategies. And I don't think I've slept properly those 18 months of my master's in School of Planning, but that really gave me such a huge grounding that even today I'm so strong, because of in my career, it helps me. It kind of takes you along through your entire career, actually, the kind of grounding that they give you there. So that was a huge lesson for me. The 2 years, 18 months gave me a huge professional grounding, so to speak. That there was not much of room for my other creative pursuits and doing anything other than just application of technology techniques and policies. And so but then through my career, then I always took time out for various other cultural programs and cultural associations and all that, and even in the real world. And then, of course, Singapore was a very interesting course that I did. And there, again, I had a lot of other activities like being in the alumni and alumni committee, being the president of the class. And then after that, also being the president of the Indian Alumni Association of the Singapore School, Lee Kuan Yew. And so I think those were some of the, the alma maters. I would say Thrissur was what helped me discover myself, and School of Planning gave me the rigor that I needed to face the real world. And the Singapore school gave me that global exposure and perspective that I lacked till then.
As you mentioned, after we enrolled for engineering, that's when we kind of face the dilemma of what we really want to do after this. So either it's technical or non-technical. And as engineers, like when we take a project, that's when we come to know whether it is kind of a thing or not. So as engineers, how can we develop projects that are actually, in touch with the ground realities, and we can make it useful for the public?
Yeah, I think if you have it now in the last year, we should have an internship. Do you have an internship module in the college now?
Yes, we have it as a part of a final project.
Okay.
We do have internships.
That's a good thing. So I think we didn't have internships. We just had a project and we had to submit a report and do a viva. But I think an internship really helps because it helps you interface with the real world and helps you to bring out a product that actually caters to the requirements of the industry. So I think that is something that is good. And also maybe, we should also encourage other kinds of companies to come into for internship, like something in the developmental world and something in rural development or something in, rural business. And so I think those kind of organizations, foundations and NGOs also should come to campus. And you can also perhaps people who have that bent of mind can actually explore themselves in those kind of outfits as well. So something that we can take up with the college as well.
Sustainability is always a topic. So, how important is the current need to create policies over them, over sustainable energy?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is something which this government is very aggressive about: sustainability and sustainable energy, green energy, renewable energy. There's a lot of aggressive policies and programs being pursued. And never before, I think, our country has been so much focused on renewable energies. And so we are going in the right way as far as renewable energy is concerned. But I think still a lot of work needs to be done in terms of actually penetrating this into every household. How many of us have solar energies in our homes? We don't have solar facilities, and it's still difficult to acquire. It's not commonplace to get a solar lamp or a those kind of photovoltaic cells, etc. It's still niche. So I think there's a lot of work required to be done in making it available to the common man. So renewable energy is the way to go. But when you talk of a country like India, which is so vast and so many, 1.2 billion, and how do you cater to the energy requirements of such a vast and complex country? So solar, wind, these alone would not be able to cater to the rising energy needs. And we have a huge coal reserve. So what do you do with all of that? So those are things that we need to work on, how to convert it into clean energy, and also look at perhaps nuclear is not something which is wrong. That's also clean energy. So I mean, but everything, but it has the way of implementing, the way of use, all that has to be done carefully. I think a lot more focus needs to be on that. Of course, we have the UN sustainability. You must have heard of the 17 sustainable development goals. So India is a great partner to that, and we are working towards the sustainable development goals. But I think still at a very, house at a very grassroots level, if every locality can become sustainable, then I think a country becomes sustainable. So in terms of usage of sustainable energy, low cost housing solutions, then sustainable sources of water, energy in every household, that will, I think, give a huge map of sustainability for the country.
So, what is your opinion on the EIA draft?
The environmental impact assessment, you say?
Yeah.
Environmental impact assessment. Yes, it's very essential. It's definitely inevitable aspect of every public project. But it can't be just for the sake of doing an EIA and getting a clearance and spending so much money on it and not really implementing it to the T. So I think that is something that we need to really be conscious of.
So what, according to you, is the role of youth amongst all of this, like public policy and EIA draft and sustainability, everything? So, what do you think is something that we need to learn from all of this, even the pandemic?
Right, absolutely. I think the youth is, I mean, India is so strong demographically, and we have a very high demographic dividend, so to speak. Most of our population is, 25 average age group. So we have a huge strength there. So all of you have, such huge potential and, ability to contribute to the country's growth. So I think youth plays a lot of, a very important role right from being a part of various community initiatives. You can begin with community initiatives, and then you go up and slowly learn how to institutionalize that, and then become part of probably organizations that deliver on these aspects of development like sustainability, etc. So I think as a student, you can begin with volunteering for various community initiatives. Maybe in Thrissur itself, you might find in your around your college, not only Thrissur, whichever college around your college, you might find issues, community issues. There may be NGOs that are working, that are resolving certain local challenges. You can associate with them in your pastime, in your free time, and that'll not be a waste of time, because that'll actually give you an exposure to local level issues, which will actually then open up your mind to various other bigger challenges.
Thank you, ma'am. Do we have Any other doubts? It's been such an enriching experience talking to you. I'm pretty sure even the viewers would agree to that because there are a lot of things that we didn't know about.
Right. So, yeah, for me, it's just been a discovery, self discovery, so to speak. There was not anybody to guide me through my career or anything. It's just my own discovery. But it's good to find a mentor. That's something that I want to tell you, all of you. Like, it's good to find a mentor because that helps to guide you through your career choices.
True. I think it's almost time also, and we don't have any more doubts.
Sure.
Thank you so much for taking time from your busy schedule and joining us.
Not at all. Yeah. All the best to all of you. Anybody has anything, you can always approach me.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's a pleasure talking to you.
Sure, same here. Absolute pleasure. All the
Stay
best
safe. Have a nice day.
in your
Yeah.
career.
I think we can end the session.